All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the first edition of the 2022 Spring Associate LaunchPad Workshop. The LaunchPad Workshops are an 8-week-long classroom interactive setting where each book of the Level 1 Professional Golf Management program is discussed by a presenter who recently became a PGA member. LaunchPad is a terrific avenue for you as an associate to expand your resources and support group and be able to tackle each book of Level 1 better and more efficiently. On this webinar, we are lucky to have PGA member Keegan Brasch. Keegan has been a PGA member for a little over 7 months and is currently a client success manager at TSnap. This afternoon, Keegan will be discussing and presenting on business planning. Please note that these webinars are meant to be interactive. So at the end of Keegan's presentation, we will open the floor to questions, comments, or experiences that anybody might have. But I highly encourage you, if you do have any questions during Keegan's presentation, to type them into the chat box. We'll do our best to get to everybody's question when we can. I do recommend everybody encourage and participate as much as they can. The more that each one of you puts into this, the more everyone will get out of it. So with that all being said, Keegan, it's all yours.
All right, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If you can just let me know as soon as you can see it. You good there? You got this?
Yes, sir. We're all good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so welcome everybody. Thanks for being here, and thanks to the SCPGA for putting this on. You know, this is the first leg of what no doubt will be a bit of a marathon for you guys. And I know it's late in the day. I know some of you probably wrapped up work. I know I just did. So I'm going to try to keep you guys awake through this whole thing. So like Steven said, we're going to run through the business planning process. It is going to be at a high level. We're going to cover as much as the manual material as we can. We're not going to run through each work experience activity individually. We don't really have time for that. Like Steven said, if you have questions that are specific to the exams and work experience activities, definitely we'll save some time at the end for that. So I figure I'll share a little bit, start by sharing a little bit about myself. Like you said, I've been a PGA member for about 7 months now. I've been in the golf industry my whole life. I played collegiate golf at SDSU. That's South Dakota State University, not San Diego State. I don't want anyone here thinking I'm better at golf than I actually am. From there, I transferred into the UNLV golf management program. So I went the university route. I had my first golf job at 14, and I've been in the golf industry ever since. I kind of pivoted and shifted into a golf software company where I've been now for the last 18 months. Like Steven said, I'm an account manager for about 100 golf courses across the country, and I work with them on the systems and technical side of their operation. So that's the utilization of point of sale systems, website, online store management, search engine optimization, basically guiding them through the transition into the digital age, which is a transition that we're seeing in every industry, not just golf. Why I joined the PGA is for stuff like this. It's the community, it's the network, it's the learning opportunities, it's a passion for the game. And I'd be lying if I said it wasn't also a little bit because of a lack of skills. I think a lot of us, thought we could make it as a touring pro. I certainly did for a while. Kind of had to have a reality check and figure out what other jobs there were in the golf industry. So my recommendations is one, know what resources are available to you. Make sure you ask for help. I've asked 50 plus PGA pros for help over the last couple of years while I've been going through this program. To this day, no one's turned me down. I extend that to you. Anything you guys need, any questions that you have, always feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can. The last one is focus on hard and soft skills. I would say, I've seen this, like, again, I work with hundreds of operators, on a monthly basis. I'm speaking about soft skills, specifically, technical skills. If you can get some of those and work on that while you're doing the PGA program. The PGA does a really good job of teaching you how to be an operator today. If you can get some of those skills to learn how to be an operator of tomorrow, next month, next year, 5 years down the line, then you're going to be really dangerous when you actually graduate the program and go out and start running your own golf business. So if you can learn how to leverage customer data, you will learn some basic website management, know the different technologies that are available in the marketplace, especially in regards to automation and engaging, current and potential customer databases. Like I said, if you do that, you're going to open up a lot more job opportunities, and it's going to move your resume pretty far up on the stack. All right, so business planning. Obviously, over the next week, you're going to be covering everything from business planning to tournament operations. The one session that I can guarantee you that you're going to use, regardless of where you go in your career, whether you stay in golf or not, is business planning. There's not a company out here or in the world that doesn't do this. And if they don't do it, then they're not around for very long. All right, so what is business planning? If we were going to break this down to its very simplest form, business planning is to put together a business plan, which is just a written document describing core business activities, objectives, and how you plan to achieve your goals. The PGA will promote you as experts in both the game and business of golf. Being just an expert in golf is not enough. You need to know the business side of it as well. And employers are looking for professionals who can establish and achieve, financial, operational, and customer service objectives. And business planning is a core skill. So like I said, we're taking a high level approach to the fundamental strategies, concepts, and applications that make up a business plan. So if we look at the business planning model here, there are 5 steps. Number 1 is defining the business. From there, we move on to assessing the current state of the business. Then you develop some objectives and related strategies. From there, you can develop a financial forecast and a 12-month budget, and then you will monitor performance. This is also what you see in the manual and in your work experience activities. Just remember, whenever you're going through this process, that business plans can look completely different depending on the type of facility. And not only that, golf courses are pretty rare in the fact that there really are multiple businesses under the same umbrella, right? If you have your golf operation, which is the golf business, but if you have a restaurant, well, you have an F&B business. If you have weddings, technically you have an events business, right? I mean, your merchandising is a retail business, and these are otherwise standalone businesses with their own performance metrics, their own market indicators, and just because they're part of the same property, they get rolled into the same business plan. So it's not just the golf operation you'll need to know, it's the other businesses as well. Luckily, the business planning model extends out to every core business area at the operation. So kind of the prompt that I like to use when I think about defining the business is, put yourself in this scenario where one day you show up on the grounds of a facility, you've never been there before, someone hands you the keys, they say, go run it. Where do you start, right? Well, you got to answer some very basic questions first. Okay, what is this facility? What do we have to offer? How do we make money? What are our different revenue generators? What are our different departments? Why do we exist? Who are our customers and where are we located? Like, these are the basic questions that you're asking when you're trying to define the business. So if we break this down, same way you'll see in your manual, you've got the facility type, which obviously is private, semi-private, or public. That's really important because those are all run different ways. You've got public courses, muni-owned courses. They're not really concerned with profitability. So that's really important, knowing what kind of facility type you have. You have geographic locale. So where are you located? What are your weather patterns? How long is your season? Look at your competitors. How many golf courses do you have in your general vicinity? Within 30 miles, 50 miles, who are your direct competitors? Who are your indirect competitors? What are the other businesses that can take away from your own business? Do you have any cooperative competitors out there, other golf courses that you can work with? You also want to know, current golf trends. What's going on in the industry? What are golf trends? Know your economic conditions, right? What's going on with interest rates? What are market performance? Are we in a bull market or a bear market? What does consumer spending look like? And then you'll also want to identify your core business areas. That's a big part of identifying your business or defining your business as well. Do you have a restaurant? Do you have an events business? Are you running tournaments? Do you have merchandising? Do you have a golf cart fleet? What do your practice facilities look like? What's your marketing and promotion? Those are all core business areas. And then you also need some, market analysis of the regional golf market, relevant competitors, things like that. This is all part of defining the business. This extends out into your mission, vision, core values, and culture. And I can guarantee you guys that these are going to be on your exam. Mission statement, I have CBRE in here. Sorry about that. I have CBRE in here. That's just the abbreviation. That's still how I remember the mission statement to today. It's concise, believable, realistic, relevant, and evolving. And just make sure that, your mission is just, why do you exist? What's your purpose? As a facility, whereas your vision statement is looking 5-10 years down the line. There's not really a specific rule for creating a vision. kind of the prompt that I like is, this is what we stand for, this is where we're going, and this is what we're going to accomplish, right? That then leads into your core values, which are just your fundamental beliefs as an organization. They are your guiding principles that dictate behavior and define culture at the facility. And I was kind of looking through the manual too, and the PGA or what they're pushing on is kind of customer service culture. I want to talk a little bit about internal, employee culture as well, and company culture. Your mission, vision, and core values, they combine to create your culture. It bleeds through the organization. If you work somewhere, employees want to feel as if they're part of a mission that has purpose, right? They want to feel like they matter. I've got the Great Resignation in here, which is basically what we call 2021, right? We had an average of about 4 million workers a month quit their jobs. In November alone of 21, almost 7% of accommodation and food service workers quit. I mean, was it solely poor culture that caused it? No, of course not. Were there other factors at play? Yeah, but there is no doubt that a strong culture, a strong mission and a vision, and good core values really help with retention. They help with employee performance, and they really help your brand identity too. You think about your current workplace. Is it a fun place to work? Do your employees enjoy showing up every day? Do they have the opportunity to learn and grow there? A majority of jobs at a golf or at a golf facility are for low pay. A lot of them have uncomfortable hours, and we as professionals expect everyone to issue a high level of customer service. And really, the easiest way to do that is to accomplish that is through a strong culture. You want to take care of your people so that they can take care of your customers. I kind of pivot off of this a little bit too. The mission, vision, and core values, they're also questions that you should ask in an interview. Every interview that I've been in the past couple of years, these are questions that I have asked. It's easy to tell whether or not it's important to a business, if their culture is important, based on their response to those questions. I have Theranos down here as a bit of an extreme example for any of you that followed that story over the past couple of years. But it does highlight why it's important to ask questions of a potential employer and do your research. For those of you that did follow the story or maybe didn't follow the story, Theranos was a health technology company, and it was founded by Elizabeth Holmes. She was this young tech entrepreneur who spent 2 semesters studying chemical engineering at Stanford. She was glorified in the media. Long story short, she had this groundbreaking blood testing device, right? And it was the basis for the entire company. She raised so much money that at its peak, Theranos was valued at $9 billion before word got out that she had nothing. She literally had nothing. And the company went bankrupt, investors lost their money, employees lost their jobs. Elizabeth Holmes is going to jail. And in the aftermath, a lot of stories came out from, potential employees and investors. And the reason why they decided not to join the company was because they asked to see the actual device. And she said no, that was a red flag, and they decided not to join the company, and it might have saved their careers. For me personally, a company or business that's not focused on culture and that can't give an in-depth explanation of their culture is a red flag to me, but choose your journey. But I would definitely recommend asking these questions next time you're thinking about joining another business or company, or even assessing your own company. All right, so if we have a detailed facility description, we have a written mission statement, core values, and established culture. We have descriptions of core business areas and a market analysis. Well, then effectively you have defined the business, and we can move on to assessing the current state of the business. So now that we know what the business is, we know how it makes money, we know what it stands for, what it strives to be. We want to assess the current state of the business. So how's it doing, right? The first thing we want to do is find out what data we have available. This is the breakdown of quantitative versus qualitative data. So quantitative data, it's usually statistical or financial data. It's less susceptible to biases and opinions. These are your financial statements, financial ratios, benchmarking, number of rounds, total revenue from each operational area, annual revenue increases, decreases, things like that. Qualitative data isn't expressed using numbers, but usually through customer feedback and or observations. These are customer observations, staff observations, general customer feedback, things like that. So I'll show you guys an example of quantitative data. I use a lot of this in my day-to-day, where basically we look at a time period, and what we're talking about is, a revenue breakdown by category. So this is a time period 2021 versus 2020. We saw a significant increase here from 2021 to 2020. We're looking at a total revenue increase of 44.5%, but we can break this down by category and each individual line item. This isn't biased information. This is pure data, and therefore it's quantitative. Same thing here. This is a basic heat map of ADRs, member distributions by hour, rainy days versus total rounds. Also not subject to biases or opinions. It's just straight quantitative data that we use to assess the current state of business. Here are a few reviews that I found online. This would be qualitative data. We have Chad, who says the staff has a personality of a brick wall. The saving grace was the spa. He goes on to say, you want to save your money, and it was the worst 5K he's ever spent. It was really awful. But the good thing about this review specifically is, we get a little bit out of this, right? He didn't like the check-in process. He didn't feel like he could reach a decision maker with his concerns. So we can backtrack and see, okay, well, do we need to make changes here? Is this a valid review? And can we learn anything from this? I have Daniel's review also. He just says sucked, terrible customer service. And I highlight, these reviews because you have to take them with a grain of salt. Like Chad's review, this was from Pinehurst. He's literally reviewing Pinehurst, giving it 1 star. Daniel's review was of Kiowa Island, giving it 1 star. We're probably going to take that with a grain of salt. We would want some more data to actually make an assessment of whether or not that is a healthy, strong business. But, again, that's an example of qualitative data. Probably one of the best operators that I ever worked for, what he did was that every week he would bring in a new employee and sit with them for an hour and just talk about what they thought about the operation and their job and areas that they think it could improve. So he was really heavily focused on actual staff feedback and getting some qualitative feedback from his staff because he can't be everywhere at all the time. So once we have our quantitative data and our qualitative data, then you can start on your SWOT analysis. And the SWOT analysis, it just assists as a starting point for developing new goals and objectives, and then strategies on how to achieve them. And a SWOT analysis can be performed at the facility level, or it can be performed at the core business level. Personally, every SWOT analysis I've ever done is at the core business level. And the basis of a SWOT analysis, right, is that you want to build on your strengths, you want to minimize your weaknesses, you want to seize opportunities, and you want to counteract threats. And we've got these separated out, obviously, by internal and external. Our strengths and weaknesses, those are things that are inside of our control, right? Opportunities and threats, those are outside of our control. That would be, market conditions, competition, things like that. A great example of why we actually need some more golf industry benchmarking too is because we need something to compare against, right? Because we can look at our historical data and, okay, well, year over year, we're doing pretty darn good. Okay, we did better than we were doing last year. But the real question is, how are we doing compared to everybody else, right? And for those of you that do know, Sagacity is making a big push for this right now, trying to get some golf industry benchmarking out there. They've had it in the hospitality industry for a long time through the STAR program, where basically you can compare your occupancy percentages, ADR, total available rooms, really any metric against an industry benchmark. And we haven't really had this in the golf industry until now. So, by the time you guys are finished with the program, running your own golf courses, maybe there will be some benchmarks that you can compare, your tee sheet utilization and your total rounds against. But an example of this would be something like rounds year over year. If I went back and I look at some quantitative data and I say, okay, well, in the last 2 years, we actually increased our total rounds by 10% each year. We have a 20% increase in 2 years. If I looked at that, I'd probably say, oh, that's a strength. We've increased 20% year over year in the last 2 years. And any other 2 years in the history of golf, that would probably be pretty good. But what Sagacity did is they went back and looked, and they gathered all this data from all these different courses. And the industry average for the last 2 years, rounds year over year, is to almost 30%. It's 28.5%. So even though you increase your rounds 20%, you're still 8.5% behind the average. Would you consider that a strength or a weakness? Because we want to turn that weakness into a strength, right? So that's why it's important to have a combination of, historical data and then also use some industry benchmarking whenever you're doing any kind of SWOT analysis if you can. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about a SWOT analysis that I do a lot in my daily job. One of those is marketing and promotion when we're talking about kind of digital strategies. So a huge strength that I see at a lot of golf courses is they've got this massive customer database, right? I've seen courses with 10, 15, 20,000 customers in their customer database. And the first thing we look at is, okay, well, what are you doing with that data? Because if you're not doing anything with it, then it's a weakness. It doesn't matter how good you are at asking for emails when people show up or getting customer information online if you're not using it. So, how many emails did you send in the trailing 12 months? How many paid ads have you pushed out? Do you have a return on ad spend KPI you can evaluate? Because if you don't, then that's a weakness. And it's also inside of our control. We're just not doing anything about it, right? And the opportunity here is this strong economy, the health of the overall golf market, and customer purchase behavior, moving more to digital purchasing behavior. And, a threat there would be, okay, well, right now is a really good time to start utilizing these strategies because the golf industry is still a little bit behind, but you've got these other courses in your area that are starting to see the same thing. And then, that would be an example of a threat. So you can break down any department, any core business area at the golf operation with a SWOT analysis and kind of find your own way of shifting it. But once we're through the SWOT analysis, that can take us to our kind of phase 3, which is developing objectives and related strategies. So you got your overall business goals, your objectives, and your strategies. So business goals and objectives, obviously, they're concrete targets. They quantify what a business will do to move from its current state to a more desirable state. So, we're at the point now where we know what we are, we know who we are, we know what we stand for, we kind of know where we're at, we've assessed our business. Now we want to basically project where do we want to go in the future, right? What are our overall business goals? What are our objectives? So any objective that you put out there, any goal needs to be a SMART goal, which I'm sure you've heard a million times before. That just means that it needs to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-oriented. So whenever you create a goal, measure it against these 5 metrics right here, make sure that it matches up with all of these. And if it does, well, that's a SMART goal. And the example that they used in the manual, I believe, was something like they wanted to increase rounds 30% over 3 years. Well, then you would have to create, 3 separate objectives to achieve that long-term goal, right? Maybe you do 10% the first year, 10% the second year, 10% the third year. Breaking it out, it's 1 year or less objective, and then you build your strategies off of that to achieve the long-term business goal. That's kind of the roadmap and how those connect together, right? And these objectives, they can be anything from increasing tournament rounds to, total merchandise revenue, implementation of new player development programs. They just have to be linked to a long-term goal, every objective. It's also important to understand that, a SMART goal at one facility is not a SMART goal at another. And what may seem like a SMART goal might not even be one if you don't have all of the information. So I have a friend of mine who works here at a course in the Southwest section. They just had a new ownership group come in, and they basically said, hey, we want you to increase daily fee rounds by 10% over the next calendar year, or increase total rounds by 10% over the next calendar year. We really want to push this over the next couple of years, but that's kind of where we want to start. If you looked at that, it's, is it specific? Yeah. Is it measurable? Yep. Is it achievable? Definitely realistic. Of course, time-oriented. Yeah. So that's technically a SMART goal, we would think, but that ownership group did not have all of the information, because she went back to them and said, okay, well, my current tee sheet utilization is at 92% on average for the entire year. So you're asking me to get to 102% tee sheet utilization. That's not even possible. So that's no longer a realistic SMART goal, right? So really what you have to do is determine which objectives have the highest priority. For that course specifically, raising total number of rounds should not be the highest priority. Maybe you want to increase your prices so you get a little more stable supply and demand ratio. You really have to determine the highest priority objectives based on your assets, your business needs, current assessment of the operations, that quantitative and qualitative data. So if your objectives, are to increase total green fees or F&B revenue, well, that's going to have a significant impact on the operation. whereas other objectives might not really move the needle. So they'll probably be a lot further down in the priority pipeline. And obviously this does break down into financial, operational, and promotional strategies. This is also, make a quick note. I guarantee this is going to be on your exam. Make sure you know the difference between those. So examples of some financial strategies would be something like increasing rates, packaging or bundling products, taking out a loan, basically anything that will affect the income or expenses without significant changes to the operation. Then you also have your operational strategies would be something like changing point of sale systems, changing your software system, or hiring new staff, modifying schedules, modifying your operational hours. That's basically anything changing the day-to-day work of the facility and its staff. And then you have your promotional strategies. These are your digital strategies: SEO, campaign management, advertisements, paid advertisements, and website adjustments. Those are all promotional. So as long as you know the technical definition behind them, it's pretty easy to identify, what each individual strategy is. So once you have those overall business goals, objectives, related strategies, then we can kind of move into preparing financial forecasts and budgets. And to be honest, when I was in the same stages where you guys were, when I was a level 1 PGA associate, there was no way I was touching a forecast. No way I was going to get to be involved in the operating budget or anything like that. And how I really learned how to budget and forecast was just doing it in my own life. Get an Excel sheet, find all of your expenses, find your expected income, see how much money you have left at the end of the month, see where you've got some room to make changes. And that's really, it's not that different from building a budget and forecast for a business, right? You're just scaling it out. What are your known expenses? What's your rent? Do you have a mortgage? How much you pay on that? What's your expected amount that you spend on food or groceries, gas? Things like that. And as you go through each month and you find out what the actuals were, you'll adjust. Maybe you forecasted and budgeted for, you're going to spend $200 on groceries this month. Well, it was the Super Bowl and you got a bunch of extra food and you spent $400, right? Well, that's going to affect your forecast moving forward, right? So really that's kind of a great place to start. And there's so much material online, on YouTube, articles out there that can kind of walk you through how to create your own budget in your own life. What you'll find is that forecasting becomes exponentially more difficult the further out in time you go, right? So the variances are going to increase as you expand the timeline of the forecast. And that's just due to the nature of the unknown. If I asked you to forecast, your expenses tomorrow, or tell me what your day is going to look like tomorrow, well, you'd probably give me a pretty good idea of what you're doing tomorrow. But if I said, okay, well, tell me about this same day a year from now, you have no idea, right? And that's why it's really difficult to get forecasting right. And really the easiest way to think of the relationship between the forecast and the budget, in my opinion, is that, you're going to go in with your assumptions and you're going to create a financial forecast based off of historic data, right? So you're going to forecast out 12 months of, anticipated expenses and anticipated revenues. On day one of your fiscal year, that forecast and budget are exactly the same. From that day forward, the financial forecast is dynamic. It's being revisited however often, depending on the business and the facility, whereas the operating budget is going to stay the same. And then any assumptions that we throw in there, well, obviously that's going to be the human element of forecasting. So you're going to create that initial forecast, you're going to have your operating budget set, and then you're basically going to live and die off of your monthly reforecasting. So I'm actually going to pull up an example of a forecast here. Let me see if I can knock this down. All right, so this is a forecast from a real golf course, and you've got your basically your 12-month or your actuals here, right? That we're comparing against the forecasted year for 2022. What I would say is that if you can get your hands on this at the facility that you work at, these forecasts should be formulaic. So if you're going through these, this is really how I learned too. So if I'm looking at line items here, maybe I don't know what a labor margin percentage is. If I just click into this cell, well, okay, that tells me F75 divided by F73. I can go up into here and see, okay, well, that's my labor my labor cost divided by my revenue. Okay, well, that's where that number's coming from. All right, what's my operating expense margin? Well, that's 76 by 73. So that's just my operating expense, again, over revenue. So you can go through, if whoever you're working for, you're working with, can get you this sheet, or if you guys want this one, I'd be more than happy to send it to you. But this is also what I did to learn, right? Was just go through an actual forecast. I don't have the budget in here, but basically what would happen is you've got your forecasted numbers in here. As the year goes through, you're going to then go in and input your actuals, and that's going to reforecast for the months moving forward. And I think that, to be honest, the manual and the work experience activities do a pretty darn good job of explaining how this works. But in this example, and kind of what you'll find also is that you're not always going to own the budgeting and forecasting process, right? So like right now, I work for a $500 million private equity company. You know, they push down our budget, they push down our forecast, they ask us for input. Even this course was owned by an ownership group. They give us a budget forecast. They say, okay, we want your input here. What makes sense, what doesn't? And that's where kind of the assumptions as an operator and your knowledge of the operation comes in, because they might have a line item that makes no sense at all, right? So you're not always going to have complete ownership of the budget and forecasting process. And this one specifically, they're going purely off of data. There are no assumptions involved. That's kind of where they lean on you as the operator to throw in assumptions and adjust the forecast. So that's kind of what that looks like. Like I said, more than happy to share this with you guys if anyone was interested in looking at it. And I'll go back to the presentation here. So that's really the basis of budgeting and forecasting. It is pretty simple. And you can go way down the rabbit hole with this stuff, right? You got to find out what's important to the facility that you're working at, and it's so different depending on the business that you're running. The current company that I work for, who owns us, I should say, they don't care about profitability. Right? They're only looking at top line growth because we're a SaaS company, and that's all they care about is, okay, how quickly can this company grow? You don't see that as often at like a golf course, right? You're more concerned with profitability and stability over a longer period of time. So it completely depends on the type of business and the type of facility that you're working at. But like I said, if you can create your own budget and your own forecast for your own life, then it's going to be a lot easier for you once you actually get into this stuff at the golf operation. And we'll move into phase 5 here. And this is monitoring performance. So whenever you're implementing a business plan, it's critical to track variances between actual results and budgeted numbers, investigate significant differences, and quickly take steps to mitigate potential problems. That's kind of the technical jargon, the technical definition behind it. And to be honest with you, I don't have a concrete answer for this. It's just so dependent upon the operation. If you're going to reference variances between projections and annuals on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, like unless there's, especially on a short-term basis, unless there's a large unexplainable variance that can't easily be explained, like you're not going to take corrective action for that. Because at that point, you're just as likely to overreact, right? And try to ruin something in the long term. And variances are expected. Like no forecast is perfect. And obviously, in the manual and any work experience activities, they give you a few markers you can pay attention to, things like rounds, yield management, revenues per round, cost of goods, percentage of sales, things like that. And it's not as simple in the golf business as it is in other businesses. I've ran 2 e-commerce companies, right? And I have a metric there where I can tell me exact number of ad spend, the exact number of spend that I need to sell a certain product. So for me, if it was within 80% of the sale price of that product, I'd kill it and then move on to a different product, because at that point I'm not profitable. You can test that quickly, right? Google has a process, and they're better than anyone in the world at this, right? They've got something they call a design sprint, where effectively they put a team together, they mock up a product, they test it, and they validate it in 5 days. So in 5 days, they can find out if that's going to pass the sprint or not. And then they release it as a revenue generating project. They decide whether or not to keep it. We can't really there aren't a lot of projects we can do with the golf operation that are similar to that. You know, if we take something like a new player development program, right? Let's say we've got 10 golfers over 3 months and we've calculated a break even at like 6 golfers. So, okay, if we get 6 golfers into this player development program, that's going to cover all of our costs, or all of our associated costs. We don't hit that number, do you kill the program? Well, you don't know, because you don't know what else is going to come out of that. You know, those 6 golfers might buy 6 memberships. You know, those 6 golfers might bring their families out, who might purchase, you know, F&B products. You know, you don't know what the actual average spend is going to be per round for that golfer, what you're going to get out of that until you've actually gone through the full process. So, you know, taking corrective action can kind of be difficult in that sense. And monitoring performance, it's a skill, and it like I said, again, depends completely on the facility that you're at. And yeah, to be honest, that's kind of the basis of it. If you guys, you know, please, any questions that you have, I can unshare my screen here. Really wanted to kind of cover this on a high level more than anything, and go through the manual. If you guys have any specific questions about the work experience activities themselves, anything that we covered, I don't know, there are a few questions in the chat here I see. Stephen, do you have these?
So everybody just that was chatting, I will have Keegan send me over that example of that budget forecast, and I'll send it out to anybody. Well, I'll send it out to everybody probably tomorrow morning. So look for that in your inbox tomorrow. But that was great, Keegan. I mean, that presentation was awesome. Does anybody have any questions for him? Or do you want to share anything to Keegan that he can, you know, expand on?
Doesn't have to be related to the presentation. I mean, if you know, questions about the general golf industry jobs, I mean, I've been in every aspect of the operation now, and now kind of, like I said, on the software technical side of it. So any questions you guys have, how to get through the program.
Hey, Keegan, this is Jason Larimore. I'm from Buenaventura Golf Course in Ventura, California. I think I was retired law enforcement, went back into golf after playing in college. My issue right now is balancing my golf work family. What can you give us that you went through in the beginning as a level 1 in order to balance those things? I'm trying to, you know, obviously maintain my game, maintain my lessons, as well as working 40 to 60 hours a week.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a tough one. You know, I utilize a calendar a lot. Basically, every part of my day is laid out in a calendar. Every part of my work day, my personal day, you know, I've got that laid up from, you know, the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. Also, just, you know, having an operational mindset and being efficient. You know, things like practicing golf. You know, yeah, if you work on your basic mechanics, you're working on your short game. Find out where your weaknesses are. You know, corny, but do your own SWOT analysis of your game, right? Figure out what you need to work on to keep that up. And then as far as the book work itself, my recommendation for these exams is just go through the manual, highlight everything that you think is going to be a question, because whoever built, the way I thought about it is whoever created these exams did exactly the same thing, right? They go through the manual, oh, that could be a question, that could be a question. So that's what I would do. I would go through and, you know, in a PDF document, just highlight it, put all of those on a sheet. By the time I get to the exam, 60-70% of the questions that are on the exam, I already thought were coming and I already knew the answers to them. So that helped me a lot. And especially the people that I know who went through the program with me that kind of had the same strategy, never had any problems with the exams.
Great. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Like I said, now is your time to participate, and, you know, your question, I guarantee you somebody else has something very similar. So
hey, Keegan, this is Evan Nicolaisen. What's the software company again that you work for now, and what is it you guys do exactly?
So I work for TSnap. So it's an iOS-based point of sale, T-sheet, marketing, accounting software, effectively. So we give you the ability to run your entire golf course through iPads, effectively. So now you've got the mobility aspect, but really kind of the whole idea behind the company was to create a perfect mousetrap, right? A data gathering engine. And then we give you the tools to take that, basically take that customer data and turn it into revenue. And an interesting thing that we're seeing happen in the industry, one of the reasons why I mentioned kind of website management and things like that, something that we're seeing a lot of courses do is adding on an online store. So if I look at a course right now and I see that they've got a database of 15,000 people, and we do something as simple as, let's say we throw gift cards on their online store, and then we market to those 15,000 golfers. If we even get 1%, if we get 1% of that database to buy a gift card, I've seen for Father's Day, $50,000 worth of gift cards sold in a day.
Wow.
You know, and you can extend that out to memberships being sold over the winter. You can actually, again, in your off seasons, you can start generating some revenue. I mean, you could even, something that I think is really interesting and where I think the golf industry is going to is that you can basically almost start competing with online retailers because your brand is important, right? So
Yeah.
like the e-commerce company that I ran, it's basic drop shipping for anyone who doesn't know what drop shipping is, right? So you've got the manufacturer over here, you've got the customer over here, and then you've got me as the middleman, right? So they go to my website, they place an order for, let's say, you know, a specific polo for your golf course, right? Well, then I place that order with the manufacturer, they print it, they ship it out. That inventory never touches me. I also don't buy that inventory, right? So I don't have these raised inventory costs. So
Right.
now effectively I'm creating margins, capturing additional revenue, and literally all I'm doing is working as a middleman between the manufacturer and the customer. So a lot of these things that we're seeing happen, you know, in other industries are going to hit golf too. You know, it is happening. So that's kind of why I was talking about, if you can get those additional skills in addition to, you know, the actual physical golf operation, you're going to be really, really in a good spot as an operator coming out of the program.
Yeah, so I work at Broken Top Club in Bend, Oregon, and I'm the first assistant pro there, and I'm just new in the program. I was a hotel manager in the hotel business for many years, but back into golf now, and I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But recently got a couple consultations for an online store for our club, you know, through Vanguard, and then another just a consult of a woman that I had met through another associate. But I'm getting a little pushback from upper management. They kind of want us to focus just on the merch that we have at the club solely. But it's a really small space. We don't have room for a lot of stuff, and we're bringing a lot of new vendors in this year. That's where I think an online store could really benefit our members and be just a really great amenity for them. So I just, you know, trying to find a strategic way to really showcase this as a good approach to management, to maybe kind of open up a little bit and see how that really could be a benefit to the way I believe it would be.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, something else that I see a lot of courses have success with too is just basic, you know, email automations, right? You can run something for any basic email tool. You can get, I think it's like 38 different data points if it's integrated with your point of sale system, where effectively, you know, I can put up something as simple as a defector campaign, which would be, okay, if someone hasn't played golf in 30 days, immediately we send them an email saying, hey, we miss you, come out and play golf. Here's a link to book your tee time, something like that, right? That just happens in the background. It's an easy metric to track, and you can see how much additional revenue actually came out of that campaign specifically. And, you know, there are 25, 30 examples of things that you can do. But, you know, my point to everyone on this call is, one, find out how big your customer database is. What are you doing to leverage that data to generate revenue? I mean, data is the new gold. And, you know, what's so funny is that if you're doing this in the golf industry, you're still so early. Like, you're still early, even though we're so far behind everyone else. So yeah, that would be a suggestion for sure.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, because that's what I'm like. You know, a member emailed me the other day and was like, hey, I want to buy this sweater, but we didn't have it in that size. And then I have to go to the vendor and they have to look into it, and then they have to get back to me. And it takes like a day and a half and 6 emails later, when if we just had an e-commerce option, they can just go search for themselves. She finds that sweater, she's going to buy something else while she's on there too. So, but I like what you said about the drop ship, where you don't have that product even in your store.
Yeah. And yeah, I would say, you know, I don't know if there are any courses doing this yet. It's something that I see coming. And, you know, I think it's something.
I see that too, just as a benefit. Yeah. Cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Keegan.
Yeah.
Steve Monroe here up at Braemar in Tarzana, California. We also have a small shop, and Bevan, I don't know if this will help you. When I got in here, I just moved things around. And I think what happens is too many times the members, they come in, they walk in, they look, they peruse, and then it's kind of like white noise. They just walk in and nothing changes, so they never really look. I literally just moved things around, and all of a sudden there was a buzz, and people were looking at stuff and buying stuff again. And then we did bring in some new stuff, and on like 10 days later, there was like $7,000 worth of sales. That was completely unexpected, but we didn't really have any like substantially new stuff. I just moved it around and like literally made it look different, and it excited people again. So I don't know if that would help out, what you're doing there with a smaller shop or not.
Do that, like at least, if not every week, every other week, I definitely refresh everything and move stuff around and change the mannequins up. And I try that as well. So, but we've had a lot of the same stuff. But as we get into spring, we're seasonal golf course. So, all of our pre-books are going to be starting in April. So we'll start to see a lot of new merch come in, and then we'll see members come back, in May, coming back from the desert and all that. So,
right. Awesome.
Thank you.
Hey, Keegan, a question came in the chat, and I'll just read it and you can answer it. It says, circling back to a work-life balance, what advice do you have for a good way to manage your progress through the PGM program without overloading yourself or falling behind?
Yeah, I mean, I would say something that helped me a lot was, again, working at an actual golf course while I was going through the program, because everything that they're teaching you in your work experience activities and through the manual, you can apply to your current job, right? So you can kind of get both sides of it, and it's a huge advantage to be able to be at a physical golf operation while you're going through this. Work-life balance is always tough, right? You hear, depending on who you talk to. I mean, if you talk to an Elon Musk, he doesn't care about work-life balance. They're just all in. But I think, for me personally, making sure you get enough sleep, that was a big shift I made in my life. I for a long time slept 4 or 5 hours while I was going to school, while I was working, while I had all of these different projects. I really focused on that, eating well, taking care of yourself, things like that'll help too. And again, any questions you have about this stuff, or if you're falling behind, or you need help on anything, reach out in any way to myself or anyone else, any other PGA member, or hopefully, some of the other associates here. We're all here to help each other. Maybe you can even create some study groups before exams. Kind of everyone brings their own questions, and you can ask each other questions, things that you think might come up. Those are just a few suggestions, but that's kind of how I've managed it. You can, you'll find the best way to do it.
A couple of other things that came in. One, could Keegan send his contact info so I can evaluate his company? So are you okay with me sending that out, Keegan?
Yeah.
To everybody? Okay, perfect. You might get some sales out of it.
Yeah, we'll see.
Another question is, any study tips?
Yeah, kind of like I mentioned, if the Quizlet is tough. I knew a lot of people that use Quizlet. It's good to find, potential questions out there, but definitely don't rely solely on Quizlet. Have the manual as well, and your work experience activities, because they're building those questions off of the manual. So if you know the manual, you'll be pretty solid. But yeah, Quizlet can give you some good ideas for sure.
Anybody else have anything for Keegan?
I just want to say thanks, man. Appreciate you giving us your time, buddy.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you guys. And yeah, I really mean it. Anything you guys, anything I can do for you, if you're ever interested in moving to, non-traditional side of the operation, we were hiring like crazy. Our company's growing like nuts. So reach out to me any way I can help. I will.
Well, Keegan, this was awesome. This was a good 50 minutes. You were very good. I appreciate everybody participating and asking questions. So again, thank you everyone for joining on the first installment of the spring LaunchPad. Please be aware that I will be sending this recording out to everybody. I'll also include Keegan's example of the budgeting forecast, and I'll also include Keegan's contact information if you want to contact him. Should a question come up after I send that you aren't comfortable asking here or just thought about as you were sleeping tonight, please reach out. I'm happy to get back in touch with Keegan, get back in touch with Tom Sun or John Kulo, the guys that kind of run this LaunchPad, and just know that we're all available via email. We do want to help you become a PGA member. I hope to see everybody next Monday on the LaunchPad. Next Monday, we'll be discussing customer service. And then I finally also want to make people aware, we do have our associate town hall, which is scheduled for March 2nd. On that town hall will be PGA of America Patriot Award winner. And if you're in the Southern California section, you know him well, Joe Groman. Joe Groman will be on, and that'll be a real treat to listen to him. So again, look for my email tomorrow with all that information. And I appreciate you all being on. Thank you and have a great evening, everyone. Thanks, Keegan.
Thanks, guys.